Hi, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and it's 12 o'clock on a Friday. What does that mean? Friday fish and chips. Let's go for a walk and a talk. And today I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about food, cooking, spices, and I'm going to cover 2 layers of gratitude. Stay tuned. I think you'll enjoy it. This is not quite what you expect. Okay, so I mentioned a lot of things there, food and cooking, and I think it was spices and a couple of layers of gratitude. And let me see. How do I start this off? Well, lately I've been on a real kick, and I go through this phase. Over the years, I've gone through this phase many times where I just do a lot of cooking, and I dig up recipes on the internet, and and I go out and buy the ingredients, whatever's needed, and I cook, and it's a beautiful thing. And in today's world, it's I can't speak for everybody, but in today's world, we're in such a hurry, we get a lot going on, and it's it can be a bit difficult for us to do that, but it is a wonderful thing to stand in the kitchen with the cutting board and maybe have the radio playing, or be listening to some music. And I love classical music, so oftentimes I'll play classical music. And just take your time and go through the recipe and make the things, and and then sit down and eat it. And I don't talk about that much. And I do have one video about that where I made a recipe. What was the recipe? Well, it was for a book about mead, and it was food pairings and mead, and it was pork tenderloin I made. It was really good. But that's a video you might want to watch if you're interested in recipes and cooking and mead. I'll put a link in the description of the video to that one. But anyway, I don't talk about it much, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit today from an aspect of gratitude. And let me explain. So it was, maybe a week ago that I had dug up this recipe for a spicy salmon with caramelized onions. I said, it's going to be a good recipe. It sounds delicious, a little bit of a zing to it, and who doesn't love caramelized onions? And and the spicy part of it was like this wonderful mixture, this dry mixture of 11 different spices. And so you mix all of that up, and you use that as a coating for the salmon. And while I was doing all this, I laid out all the spices on the table. And I'm going to show you a picture. I took a picture. And, had the salmon and all these spices and all the various ingredients, and I was cooking. And I thought to myself, this is just remarkable. In the world we live in today, there's a lot of criticism, a lot of negativity, and a lot of, how crazy things are. And I even started that out a little bit like that myself by saying, we live in a crazy world, but we don't have time to cook as like we should, But when you stop and look at it a different way, it's like we have built kind of a remarkable thing here. And the spices for my spicy salmon with caramelized onions are a good example of this. So I looked at the different spices, and I was like, geez, and let me give you a little bit of a list here. There was ground black pepper and paprika and cayenne pepper, minced garlic and Dijon mustard, and I thought to myself, wow, all these different spices, somebody had to master the expertise of growing them, and there's this whole distribution system of getting a spice, which in times gone by was, a rarity for kings and queens and wealthy people. Just a very rare elite would get pepper, right? If you lived in a castle, maybe you got pepper. If you were the king of the castle, and maybe you have a few minions, your close inner circle. But for the most part, it has to be grown in, like India, right? But for, $4, I have a can of ground black pepper. Why, it's remarkable. It's remarkable is the word for it. So I started to think, and after I made that spicy salmon, which was wonderful, and I started to do a little research, and I said, I forget the price, $7 a pound, I had salmon that probably came from Alaska, maybe to the North Atlantic. I mean, think about that. And this salmon traveled safely to my hometown. And I got it for $7. And then I started looking up the spices anyway. So the ground black pepper, chances are good that came from India. The spices just in this recipe, there were 11 different spices from 7 different companies. And let me give you a quick look. The paprika probably came from Asia. So according to the website for the company that makes it. The cayenne pepper is typically grown in tropical and temperate environments. So they didn't grow that in New England. Minced garlic, California, maybe China. The Dijon mustard, I'll get into that in a second. And onion powder, where did that come from? I didn't even bother to look it up. The salt, just salt, which was such a commodity for some countries and people. A thing that's so necessary for human life, right? And health. It's like dirt cheap. It is literally dirt cheap nowadays to get iodized salt. It comes from probably Germany or the U.S., possibly China. The olive oil, I used extra virgin olive oil, and it came from Spain. Here's minced onion, brown sugar, and listen to this, mustard seed, right? Probably came out of Pakistan or India. Maybe Canada. So 7, and wait, and one more thing, just to say, the Dijon mustard. And that in itself was part of the recipe, and it itself has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ingredients plus flavoring. And of those 10 ingredients, we're talking, citric acid, white wine. So, it's easy to look at the negative and how crazy things are, and, there's some truth to that, but in a way, we've built this remarkable thing that comes to my table, let alone the fact that, today, instead of fish and chips, I'm having scallops and clams. I mean, for, $12. The complexity of all of this is a lot, but it's all worked out. It all gets delivered to the local grocery store, and then I can even have it delivered to my home now. So I'm grateful for that. That's the point here. The gratitude for how remarkable this whole thing is. I mean, there are a zillion human beings who never tasted paprika in their life, let alone, olive oil or minced garlic. Diet was very dependent upon where you lived. The local stuff, that was pretty much it. And now we have the gustatory experience of the world at our fingertips, cheap, inexpensively. So if you have a chance, the next time you cook, and pause and think about how remarkable all of that is, and all these various things that literally come from the four corners of the earth to your table. I think that's amazing what we've done. I was looking up, what spice was it? And it's like 50 tons of it are made every year. I think it might have been cayenne pepper or something. I forget which one of those. But I was like, 50 tons. Just the ability to do that is just something that's special. So let me talk a little bit about a second aspect of gratitude, and that is my gratitude to you. Here we go. A ragged band of travelers we, with swords on our backs and a chest full of dreams. We'll brave the green hills and the deep blue sea. We're off to Merrymead. Thank you. See you again, hopefully, next week.